Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome to everyone. We want to begin, as always, by welcoming all that you bring with you to this space, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences. All that helps make you who you are is welcome here today, and this includes those of you who are in the room with us today, who hear me say this each Sunday, as well as those who might be joining us for the first time today. You're equally as welcome, and it's also true of the many of you who are streaming with us this morning. So great to have all of you with us in person and virtually. I do have a couple of announcements. One, I want to put in a plug for next Sunday's guest speaker, who's a public historian, Logan Camporielli. Am I saying that right? Great. Who will tell the dramatic story of how he discovered, it's been in the news a lot the last couple of years, but discovered Spokane's redlining covenants, which barred non-whites from living in many Spokane neighborhoods and still remain on the deeds of many mid-century properties. Although they are no longer considered legal, they're still there. So he's going to talk with us about that and maybe what we can do to get those off the books next Sunday. So I do appreciate those of you turning out when I'm out of the pulpit on Sundays, because some of these speakers are absolutely excellent. They provide you a wide variety of topics, and I think that our guest speaker team is just doing an extraordinary job finding quality speakers. So it's a great way to show our appreciation to them as well as to the speakers. So please do make it if you can. This past week, for most of it, I was in Denver attending a conference. It was the Heterodox Academy Conference. If you're not familiar with the term heterodoxy, just think the opposite of orthodoxy. It is being able to deal with lots of other ideas rather than just one idea. This was founded by the social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, and it was very, very rewarding. So I'm going to hold off until July before I tell you more about that, but I'll do a sermon in July that tells you a little bit about what that conference was like, some of the pertinent information and whatnot that you paid for, because I went on my expense account, of course, so I want the congregation to benefit from some of what impressed me and what I learned as well. And then this week, I am going to mostly be gone to Portland to not attend the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly, but to at least stand outside with some signs saying, I'm not as happy as some with what's going on in our religion these days, and there'll be some others who join me. If this is something that you're planning on attending and want to participate in those demonstrations, the key times are going to be Wednesday afternoon, before the sort of what we call banner parade, and when folks are first arriving, and then the next morning, Thursday morning around 8, when people will begin arriving. Yes, Don?
Do you have any four-letter words in your signs?
Four-letter words? Those are between the lines, yeah. My sign will say freedom, reason, and tolerance. That's what I want. But again, this is about demonstrating our values, not protesting somebody else's. But yeah. So anyway, be doing that, and I'll let you know more about that when I'm back the next time I see you. Okay, final announcement this morning on my list. Happy Father's Day. Thank you. We probably have a few fathers in the room and a few people who've had fathers and a few others who've had fatherly figures. And all of those are important, so I hope it's a great day for you. With that said, let's take a few moments to greet one another this morning. Be sure and make some new friends along the way today if you can. And if you are joining us for the first time, please don't be too shy. We're a pretty friendly bunch around here. And for those of you who are streaming with us, feel free to shoot us a text or something. All right, and as always, there will be more time to visit during our social period following our service, but let's move forward now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
The following words were written by Beth Hazard. Harking back to Sigmund Freud, some psychologists have characterized religious beliefs as pathological, seeing religion as a malignant social force that encourages irrational thoughts and ritualistic behaviors. Of course, psychologists' doubts, and those of countless others throughout history, haven't curtailed religion's powerful hold on humans. Religion has survived and thrived for more than 100,000 years. It exists in every culture, with more than 85% of the world's population embracing some sort of religious belief. Researchers who study the psychology and neuroscience of religion are helping to explain why such beliefs are so enduring. They're finding that religion may in fact be a byproduct of the way our brains work, growing from cognitive tendencies to seek order from chaos, to anthropomorphize our environment, and to believe the world around us was created for our use. Religion has survived their surmise because it helped us form increasingly larger social groups, held together by common beliefs.
Well, we're a church without much ritual, but we do have this little ritual that we do at the solstices and at the equinox. And this church also honors the earth. So if you will look to your right, past the pulpit, you will see that I have put up a new banner. The summer banner is up now. And we always sing this little song called Chant for the Seasons. So I ask that you rise as you are able, please, and sing the summer verse.
And it feels like summer too, doesn't it? Monday, okay. Summer will arrive on Monday. We are now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our thoughts and minds. I'm going to begin this morning with a candle for the people of Ukraine, as well as the people of Russia and others in that part of the world that are being most impacted by the violence there. One of the things you guys know I love is technology, and just yesterday I had my headset on and found a 360 video of a young woman from Ukraine who talked for about 20 minutes on what it was like, what it's been like, and living in a basement, and one day everything's normal, the next day you're hearing explosions, and it's a real human crisis that's going on right now for our brothers and sisters across the waters, and I have to say it makes a lot of my concerns and problems feel pretty petty, to be able to live in a neighborhood where I'm not worried about it being destroyed or worse. So I'm very genuine. I know we're very genuine when we kindle a candle each Sunday during this time on behalf of our friends there. So let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others that you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
Just let your love flow. Sing along if you'd like. Well, there's a reason for the sunshine sky, and there's a reason, hey, why I'm feeling so high. Must be the season where the love light shines all around us. So let that feeling grab you deep inside, and then you're reeling where your love won't hide when you go stealing through the moonlit night with your lover. Here's the chorus, sing along if you like. So let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams, and let your love show. You're gonna know what I mean, that's the reason. So let your love fly like a bird on a wing, and let your love find you to all living things, and let your love shine. Hey, you're gonna know what I mean, that's the reason. Now there's a reason for those moonlit nights, and there's a reason for the candlelight, 'cause it's a season where your love light shines all around you. Don't let that feeling grab you deep inside and send you reeling where your love won't hide, and then you go stealing through the moonlit night with your lover. I'll sing along. Well, let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams, and let your love show. You're gonna know what I mean, that's the reason. Now let your love fly like a bird on a wing, and let your love find you to all living things, and let your love shine. You're gonna know what I mean, 'cause that's the reason. One more time. Now let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams. Now let your love show.
Good morning. It's such a lovely music that I'm glad that my story has a happy ending. This story is based on a Chinese fable. There was a horse who liked competitions. Perhaps he used to run in races. One day, the horse met a monkey and a squirrel who were having a friendly chat. The horse greeted the two and asked them what they were talking about. "Oh, we are trying to name the most quick-witted and fast-moving animal," they said. And the monkey added, "I bet I'm the one." "Can you prove it?" said the horse. "Let's see who is really fast." "I love competitions," said the squirrel. "Let me be your judge. Look at the apple I'm holding. Whoever gets my apple first will be the winner." The monkey quickly climbed up the tree, took the apple from the squirrel, and began shouting, "I won, I won, I won." "This is not fair," said the horse, and asked for a different judge. "How about me?" said the bat as it was flying by. "Do you see that faraway mountain? He who is the first to reach the foot of the mountain will be the winner." No doubt. The horse was the first, right? Surely he declared himself the winner. "I'm not convinced," said the monkey. "I was the winner first." Oh my. The horse and the monkey would probably continue arguing if it were not for an old, wise panda. "Let me be your referee," said Panda. "There is a peach tree on the other side of the river. Whoever brings a peach to me will be the winner." The horse swam across the river, came up to the peach tree, but he could not reach any fruit. What about the monkey, you may say? There is a little secret about monkeys. Not all of them can swim. And this monkey was thinking very hard, figuring out how to get that fruit. "Horse, come back. Please take me across the river so that we both can get peaches." Well, the horse thought it was not a bad idea. He crossed the river and then carried the monkey to the peach tree. The monkey climbed up the tree and quickly picked several peaches. Then they both came back to the other bank of the river, where Panda was meeting them with a big smile. "Congratulations, you are awesome. You're both winners because you work together." Let's think what's going to happen if the world is judged by squirrels and bats.
Let us meditate on these wonderful words by Mahatma Gandhi. There is a soul force in the universe which, if we permit it, will flow through us and produce miraculous results. Again, there is a soul force in the universe which, if we permit it, will flow through us and produce miraculous results.
For our reading this morning, I'm going to invite you to read number 434 with me. Number 434. Now, this is a brief reading from the back of our hymnal, and when I gave the invocation at the Rotary a couple of weeks ago, this was the one I gave, and it reminded me a lot of what the Rotary is about, and it also reminds me of we're about. So I would invite you to read it with Deb and I in unison today. It's very short. Number 434. 434. Okay. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
Humble and kind. You know there's a light that glows by your front door. Don't forget your keys there under the mat. But when your childhood stars shine, always stay humble and kind. Go to the Unitarian Church, 'cause your mama said to. Visit your kinfolks anytime that you can. You won't be wasting your time. Always stay humble and kind. Open doors, say please and thank you. Hey, never steal and never cheat, never lie. Gonna be some mountains to climb, but always stay humble and kind. When those dreams you're dreaming come to you, when your work is finally realized, keep your pride deep inside and always stay humble and kind. You're not going to get help from anybody, you know, but don't hold a chip or a grudge. Here's why. That bitterness will keep you from flying. So always stay humble and kind. And know the difference between just sleeping with somebody. You know when sleeping with somebody that you really love. And don't use I love you for a pickup line. And always be humble and kind. Open doors, say please and thank you. Never steal, never cheat, never lie. There's gonna be some mountains to climb, but always stay humble and kind. And when your dreams that you're dreaming come to you, when your work is finally realized, keep your pride deep inside. Always stay humble and kind. happen here pretty soon. So when it gets hot, get yourself a root beer popsicle. Turn off your AC and roll your windows down. Let that summer sun shine. Always stay humble and kind. And don't take for granted all the love that this life has given you. When you get to where you're going, don't forget just to turn right back around. Try to help the next one in line. Let's always be humble and kind. Do off the beating.
Thank you, Bryant. It's a beautiful song, full of meaning and beautifully performed as always. Thank you. So when I left the Southern Baptist faith and the Christian religion in my mid-20s, I quickly turned to the somewhat mystical writings of the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung in my desire to better understand myself and the meaning of life. I read much, if not most, of Jung's writings, which is no small undertaking, given the length of his many collected works. For many years, I described myself as a Jungian. In fact, the only tattoo on my body, which I acquired in my late 30s, is the Babylonian god of time, Aeon, as depicted in a photograph of a statue in actually two of Jung's volumes, including my favorite, which is a volume called Aeon. Jung was an important part of my personal growth and understanding, but by the end of my third decade, having done so much inner work, I finally learned that life isn't about becoming a perfect person without any psychological hang-ups. It's about becoming a functional human being, despite our imperfections and our personal issues. So my time of concentrated introspection and self-development drew to a close as I began to focus on what I can do as is to be a meaningful and practical use to others in the world. I now would consider my life a waste if not predominantly lived in service to greater causes than myself. Introspection and self-reflection are an important part of individual growth and maturation, but centering our entire lives on ourselves eventually stunts our development and turns us into narcissists and makes our lives insignificant. Fortunately, my intense and initial interest in Jung led me to study other psychologists as well. Psychology is a word you may know that means the study of the soul, from the Greek word psyche or psyche, from meaning soul. And it became the source of my religious life. The first time I heard soul used in this way as a living and present reality in our lives, not merely as something that might persist in the afterlife, was the first time that Peggy and I visited First Unitarian Church in Louisville, Kentucky. It was only the second Unitarian service we'd attended, and it was the congregation that we later joined to officially become Unitarian Universalists in 1989. That was just a couple years after we'd left Christianity behind. The guest speaker that day was Phil Smith, a retired UU minister turned Jungian psychotherapist. He spoke a lot of the soul, most of which went way over my head. But I understood enough to grasp him saying that it is something essential in this life, not the next. And its health and well-being is fundamental to who we are. It was the thing that was stirring inside and that compelled me to go and introduce myself to Phil after the service. I was pretty shy in those days and kept wanting to step out of that receiving line, but my soul, my psyche, insisted that I stay the course. So I sheepishly asked if we could possibly meet sometime, and to my surprise, Phil very quickly and graciously gave me his number and suggested we have lunch that very week. And that was the start of one of the most important friendships of my life. Phil became one of the few and most significant mentors in my life, and I should say a real father figure on this day. He not only pointed me in the direction of Carl Jung, but set me on the path of self-discovery and the hard inner work that I desperately needed to undertake. At some point, Phil retired, and along with his wife, Sharon, who was also a dear friend to both Peggy and I, moved away to North Carolina and eventually to the Northeast. But we stayed in touch, and I stayed on the path that he had guided me upon until it came time to veer off into a new direction. Phil died of Alzheimer's just a few months after we moved to Spokane, so I hadn't been able to communicate with him for some time. I wept when I learned of his death in a way I had not when my own parents died. And that night I had an unforgettable dream. I was in a funeral home where I saw Phil in a dark suit walking about, healthier and younger than I'd ever known him. It was a place where the living and the dead mingled together and were aware of each other, but were unable to speak to each other. Phil gave me a reassuring nod. Then I exited and found myself walking upon a winding path in the countryside. I soon came upon Phil sitting in lotus position in the center of the path. He had become reincarnated as a baby Phil and was wearing a very crumpled white baby gown. "I guess I still have a few wrinkles to iron out," he said. Like a lot of good Unitarians, Phil was from Maine. He was also a practicing Buddhist who believed strongly in reincarnation and also had a self-deprecating sense of humor, so this was a characteristic of something he would actually have said. And as I continued along the path, he instructed me to eat your cake and be careful where you park your car. Or as they say in Maine, pack your car. And I immediately awoke with this phrase in my mind and understood exactly what he meant by it. Again, it was shortly after I had arrived in Spokane, and I was in love with the place and with the church, and dreaded the thought of ever having to leave. But I knew what my dream Phil was saying. Enjoy your cake, but don't get stuck in your ways. Eat your cake and be careful where you park your car. I hadn't thought about that dream in many years until the conflict in our church following the controversy that arose in the aftermath of my book, The Gadfly Papers. I wasn't enjoying it anymore at that time, to say the least, and I knew things had shifted, that I was not and am not in the same place I was 11 years ago. I suspect none of us are. Difficult as change can be, however, I agree with Dream Phil's mantra, eat your cake and be careful where you park your car. Life is pointless if we don't experience some joy along the way, even if only occasionally, and if it is only the joy of enduring difficulties and overcoming the challenges that help us achieve our goals and fulfill our own purposes. Exercising to the point of exhaustion is not enjoyable, but we do it in order to have better health. This, to me, is the best way to live life, not avoiding difficulties and challenges in order to remain happy or content or conflict-free, but to obtain happiness by working our way through them to become better and stronger in the process. I bring this up as an example of how studying psychology on one's own, as a novice, not as a professional, can give direction and bring meaning to one's life, just as much or more than any other source of inspiration. If, after all, the soul, the psyche, is a significant presence in our lives, not merely something to be saved in the afterlife, shouldn't we turn to the writings of those who have most studied it to better understand it and how to save it right now so that it is healthy and happy and whole? I believe the answer is yes, which is why, when working on my Doctor of Ministry, I decided to write my dissertation on the psychology of religion. My advisors initially expressed some concern about my proposal, especially the section I entitled Fundamentalism as Fixation, which I explained by saying, I have found the similarity between fundamentalism and the developmental description of preschool children too precise to overlook. These common characteristics include black and white or extremist or relative thinking, inconsistent reasoning or illogical and contradicting, holding irrational, nonsensical beliefs, magical thinking, authoritarianism, yielding to an unquestionable superior, usually a patriarch, and 5, a punitive mindset, meaning the solution to all wrongdoing is monolithically retributive. Right, this is why the anti-abortionists are so often also against birth control and sex education and planning for parenthood, because the only solution is a punitive one, right? We have to pass a law. A law is the answer. A law is the solution. When in fact we've reduced the number of abortions dramatically in this country through sex education, through planning for parenthood, through contraception, all of those things. That does the job. And it doesn't take a hammer to do it. Anyway, I veered off a little. So my primary dissertation advisor was concerned that I might offend somebody. Why do my writings always offend people? I don't know. I don't get it. So even back then, around 2009, the dread of saying anything controversial, even if true or at least substantiated, had made some academics fearful of saying anything meaningful. After all, us liberals wouldn't want to say anything that might offend fundamentalists. Still, I insisted that the evidence was on my side and that I would only draw conclusions based on what the research indicates. My conclusion was and is that the fundamentalist mindset is a form of psychological fixation, which means its adherents are stuck. They're fixated at an immature level of moral and cognitive development. This is evidenced by the same characteristics ascribed to the thinking of preschool children, which, again, characteristically are black and white, magical, punitive, and authoritarian. My research surveyed, in general, what classical psychologists had to say about religion, including William James and Sigmund Freud and Theodore Reich and Carl Jung and B.F. Skinner, and Erich Fromm, of course, among other perhaps lesser-known psychologists. It also considered the perspective of several developmental psychologists like Jean Piaget, Lawrence Kohlberg, James Fowler, Carol Gilligan, Robert Keegan, as well as other less familiar developmentalists. And in addition to many respected figures in other fields like philosophy and theology, I included some of the most recent research on fundamentalism by folks like Karen Armstrong and Martin Marty and Charles Strozier of Chicago University, among many other lesser-known experts on that subject. And these figures represent a rather wide range of thoughts and opinions on the matter, but the simple question binding all of them together regards what psychology has to say about religion. Is it a healthy thing? Is it not? Is it a pathway or is it a pathology? So I included chapters about the tendency of most major religions to be or to become patriarchal, fundamentalism in terms of developmental psychology, the tension between freedom and belonging that is inherent within the human condition and in our societies, how our theological ideas evolve in line with our psychological development, that is, our beliefs in God change as we mature, if we mature, and the tendency of religion to foster magical thinking, or what classical psychologists call the omnipotence of thought, that I can alter the world with my mind, or that what I think about the world is truer than what I experience about the world. That's all omnipotence of thought, magical thinking. So, for example, we know that the early Christians established egalitarian communities in which they shared their belongings and in which there was neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, meaning there was no racial, class, or gender discrimination. Unfortunately, this social experiment was short-lived, and Christianity soon reverted to authoritarianism and inequality. The question I considered is, how does psychology help us explain this shift? What happened? Why is it, as Erich Fromm says, that Christianity, which had been the religion of a community of equal brothers without hierarchy or bureaucracy, became the church, the reflected image of the absolute monarchy of the Roman Empire? According to Fromm, it happened because the original religion was transformed into another one. As I put it myself, the change occurred not because the original faith eventually spread throughout the Roman Empire, but through its misappropriation by the empire, eventually changing it into the very thing that it was born to resist. Christianity became the very opposite of the principles it was founded upon. Sound familiar? It became, as Fromm says, again, the church. Like other primates, Sigmund Freud, who gets a bad rap, and I have to say I really agree a lot with Freud, especially when he talks about society and how religion in particular impacts it. So Sigmund Freud presumes that small human hordes were originally governed by one dominant male. After a time, resentful sons band together to kill this overbearing father, and feeling resentful, they eventually erect a totem to serve as a surrogate father that they then worship and fear. In the Christian myth, he says, man's original sin is undoubtedly an offense against God the Father. And if Christ redeems mankind from the weight of original sin by sacrificing his own life, he forces us to the conclusion that this sin was murder. According to the law of retaliation, which is deeply rooted in human feeling, a murder can be atoned only by the sacrifice of another life. The self-sacrifice points to a blood guilt. And if this sacrifice of one's own life brings about a reconciliation with God the Father, then the crime which must be expiated can only have been the murder of the Father. That's Freud's line of reasoning. In other words, Christianity became patriarchal out of guilt. And Jesus' martyrdom came to be seen as a blood sacrifice to alleviate that guilt. And if Fromm is right, this explains why human gods are usually male, but also why human societies, at least primitive human societies, are usually patriarchal. Freud says, the reconciliation of the Father is the more thorough because simultaneously with this sacrifice there follows the complete renunciation of woman, for whose sake mankind rebelled against the Father. So now you start to see the patriarchal shift here, right? By this he means the dominant male controlled access to the females, which is true of apes, ape communities, small ape hordes or troops in general, which is why the sons killed him to begin with. So after their patricidal act, they projected their guilt, their own guilt, onto the females. It's your fault. You made us do this. Just as Adam blames Eve for having disobeyed his father's command. Freud's student, Theodor Reich, believes this further explains the bizarre account in Genesis in which Adam effectively gives birth to Eve when she is fashioned from his rib. And the Greek myth of Zeus giving birth to Dionysius from his leg and Athena from his forehead. In one Greek play, Orestes is acquitted of murdering his own mother when Apollo successfully argues the mother is no parent of that which is called her child, as proven by the birth of Athena. The mother is unnecessary. So this is, a common sort of shift. So, at least according to psychoanalysis, as Freud says, religion would thus be the universal obsessional neurosis of humanity. Like the obsessional neurosis of children, it arose out of the Oedipus complex, out of the relation to the father. So there's one idea of what religion is about. This view isn't very flattering to religion, obviously, and some psychologists like William James and Carl Jung, who love to find rich meaning in these myths, had more positive opinions about its function in our lives. My point here is only to give you a brief example of how psychoanalyzing religious myths, as if they were a patient's dream or fantasy or stream of consciousness, can work. Right? Religion comes from the unconscious, is the assumption here. So I won't go into the other topics of my dissertation today because it would take too long, although much of it has actually been distilled in my sermons over the years, as many of you probably know. So since coming here, I've especially continued and especially enjoyed learning about the relatively new branch of psychology known as evolutionary psychology, particularly ETAS theory, which stands for Evolutionary Threat Assessment Systems Theory. Now, evolutionary psychology analyzes human behavior by considering how it might add to our survival as a species. Why do we do the things we do if everything we do is really to advance our own survival? If that's the unconscious drive, if that's the genetic drive in all of us to preserve the genetic information, or live long enough to preserve the genetic information, how does our behavior facilitate that? That's kind of the theory. And ETAS is the theory, as cognitive therapist Paul Gilbert explains succinctly, that the most important question faced every day by all animals, including humans, is whether their immediate environment is dangerous or not. It's the fundamental question. All creatures, including humans. Am I safe? So the first thing we consider in every new situation, am I safe? And how we respond to that question is an indicator of our general psychological health. If once we assess that there's no danger and we can relax, we're in pretty good shape. All those systems regulate. We find some calm. But remaining in a state of hyper-alertness and chronic anxiety and tension, even if there's no present danger, indicates that something is probably awry. And I think if we analyze our society based upon the rising rates of anxiety and hypertension, we might say something is awry. So I bring ETAS up only to point out that my interest in psychology hasn't decreased over the years, and I continue to explore it as a primary source of insight in my ongoing evolution and growth as a human being. But what I want to begin to close with is the insight that I found most valuable through researching and writing this dissertation. And this I can state in a single sentence. Religion can be used to drive us more deeply into our delusions or to help us better cope with reality. The same religion can help drive us deeper into our delusions or help us better cope with reality. It's the psychological perspective with which we approach religion, like anything else in life, that determines this. As I stated earlier, my interest in Jung began to wane in my late 30s as I became more comfortable with myself, thanks to him, and could begin to use my own agency, as imperfect as it is, to make a positive difference in the world and in the lives of others. And this explains why in my later years I've become more a devotee of psychologist Erich Fromm, who you've heard me speak about in a lot more of my sermons than anyone else, who was a social psychologist, and his psychoanalysis of society has really helped me shift from the inner work to the outer work. Instead of just understanding myself, it helps me understand how the world works, at least through his frame. The reality around us, as beautiful and enjoyable as it can also bring us fear and suffering. So we develop many unconscious coping mechanisms that can cause us to avoid the reality around us, or coping mechanisms to help us actually cope with it, to deal with it. Religion is one of those mechanisms. We can use it to avoid and deny reality or to accept it. Right? Religion can give us the courage and the understanding and the awareness and the fortitude to move through life's difficulties, to move through them, to face them. Or it can be the excuse to pretend they don't exist. Seep into that omnipotence of thought, the ideal world. The world is what I want it to be. And don't let anybody tell you any differently. A particular religion like Christianity, for example, can be used to justify our abuse of others, as it has, in order to achieve our own selfish interest. By focusing, for example, on the innate evil in non-believers who deserve to be punished for their sins. If occupying their land is a byproduct of that, so be it. Or we can focus on its teachings about compassion and justice, to recognize our responsibility to help alleviate the suffering around us, right? That's what a lot of religious people do. Their religion leads them to be a compassionate presence in the world and in the lives of others. Mother Teresa. The point is that the same religion can be a means of accepting the difficult realities around us or of denying them. Likewise for Buddha. Before Buddha was enlightened, he was a prince who had grown up behind triple thick walls, unable to experience the outside world, locked into his unconsciousness, his unawareness of what was going on around him. It's really a symbol of autism, of extreme autism. Right? Can't connect with the world because my psychological defense mechanisms are protecting me from facing the suffering around me. So when he finally ventures out, he immediately recognizes the suffering around him. And his entire journey towards enlightenment is about learning to cope with the harsh reality outside himself, outside the unconscious walls erected to protect him from experiencing life's agonies. And it is in dealing with that he becomes the Buddha, the Bodhisattva. This is why at the end of my dissertation, I theologize that reality is God, or that God is reality. Everything that exists must be real, right? So it's omnipresent. Reality is the only thing that exists, and is at once the most abundant resource in the universe and yet its rarest gem. Since reality is the only thing that exists, it must be the most abundant resource in the universe, but also its rarest gem from our perspective. For like the fictional God of Moses, we are only able to catch small glimpses of reality. In the human condition, we can only understand small bits of reality at best, which is what makes it so exciting, right? Because we're always searching, we're always grasping, we're always trying to figure it out, unless we're locked behind those three walls, and we don't want to. We want to claim that this small world we've erected for ourselves is what reality is. I don't need to know anything else. But reality is too expansive for us to ever comprehend it its entirety. Yet religion is, again, one of those tools that can help us understand some of it, or to avoid it altogether by remaining stuck, fixated, or stuck within the walls of our unconscious mind. So the choice is up to us. And what we decide may very well save our soul. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we're going to close today with a song that may not feel like a match, certainly to Todd's sermon, which I very much enjoyed. Reminded me of all sorts of things. I went to a Lutheran college, and we were required religion, and so I was able to plumb some of those depths myself. And the last course I took that was required, if I could pick it, it was the psychology of religion, and so I loved hearing what you had to say.
We could just change the word beautiful to interesting.
We could. Yes, we could. So the last song we're going to sing is "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning." I'm trying to change my framework so that I love this rain. I always think of sunshine, but you know what? The rest of the country is in agony because they're sweltering. We are not. So please stand as you're willing and able to sing "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning" from Oklahoma. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's the sight of elephant's eye, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling, everything's going my way. Day. Yes, we will in a second. Yeah.
Once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. Ralph Waldo Emerson. These words are my own, written for the All Little Nature Chapel. On this special Father's Day, may we gather around to uphold the magical unity of all life, promote the sanctity of love and respect for the universe and all the world's inhabitants, and celebrate the triumph of goodness effected through courage, honor, and non-violence. Namaste. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.
Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom. Go, Brian.
Doo-wop-a-doodle. You know, we're born into our lives, we're cold, wet, and naked. We got no idea about what's really going on. In just a few years from the nipple, you're gonna be gone without a ripple, and you'll never figure out really what was going on. Ain't that the truth? We all live our lives like we're just on a river and we float along. Sometimes things are going okay and sometimes they're going wrong. But when you get down near the end of your line, you better hope you did good most of the time. Now you can just sing along with this next part if you'd like. It's pretty simple. Let's just all say, doo-wop-a-doodle-a-doo-da, baby. Doo-wop-a-doodle-a-doo-da. 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 Makes you feel better, yeah. Well, you know what's over? What's over is done. And a love affair ain't worth keeping, you know, when it ain't fun. Some say better than nothing. Give me a BTN. I say just give me a BLT and that'll be fine. Let's do a little thing one more time. Or twice, whatever. Doo-wop-a-doodle-a-doo-da. Doo-wop-a-doodle-a-doo-da. Baby, doo-wop-a-doodle-a-doo-da. Nice harmony. Doo-wop-a-doodle-a-doo-da. Baby, 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 yeah. Thank you.